Hey everyone, it's Keeley here for Soy and Shea, and thank you so much for joining me for today's soap making video where we're going to go and make bunny hops. Now I have made a really silly mistake with this soap. I actually didn't have the intention of bringing out an Easter soap this year. I didn't do one last year because the previous years the sale of themed products have been declining, and I've made that decision to no longer do themed products other than Christmas. However, I've had this kind of revival with playing with soap dough, and I decided it would be fun to make some little bunny butt soaps. I used to make a bunny butt soap a while ago, and I thought I would do a recreation of it, and I thought, you know what, Easter is coming up, let's make it. Now for some reason in my head, I thought Easter was at the end of April, and it's not. It's at the beginning of April, and I'm actually making this soap in the second week of March, which means that this soap is not going to be ready until the weekend after Easter. So I'm going to end up with a bunny themed soap after Easter on the shelf. But do you know what? Who cares? We can have a bunny soap at any time of the year. So I am just going to push forward with it, and we're going to go and make bunny hops. And the first thing I'm going to show you is how I make the really cute little bunny butts to go on this soap. Let's go. So as you can see, I have already made quite a few of my little bunny butts here, and I need to make 2 more. So I'm going to take you along and show you how I do them. And I'm using some white and pink soap dough to do this. So we're going to start with the white, and I'm just going to grab my scales just to make sure we get relatively the same weight across all of our embeds here. So I'm going to start by breaking off a piece that's way too big. That is about 2 grams. So we're working in very small amounts here. So that is close enough to 2 grams there. I'll break off a second piece because we do need to make 2 little bunnies, and I find it best just to work in sort of a little bit of a progressive order here. So we've got our bodies. I want to break off a piece that's about 0.4 of a gram for the tails. That was perfect. See if we can do that again. Oh, just a teeny bit too big. That's perfect there. And you'll be surprised at how much that tiny little amount can make such a huge difference to the actual size that you end up with. I'm now going to do the little feet, and we're going for about 0.2 of a gram. So these are tiny, but I find it best to, as I said, weigh out all of my little bits and then work in sort of an order of putting them together. That way I'm not getting white on my hands, then picking up pink and then coming back to the white and cross-contaminating all of my colors. It also just makes it a bit quicker to work as well. We need 1 more. No, it's just a little bit too small. Perfect. We've got all of our white pieces done up. So now I'm going to take the sort of bigger piece here, just going to roll it into a ball in my hand just to get a nice sort of smooth surface. And then I'm going to kind of push it into a long oblong and push it down. Make it look like the back of a bunny. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's the actual little embellishments that really turn this into the little bunny butts here. So I'm going to roll that one again. I'm just making it into a bit of a sort of almost like a tablet sort of format, making sure I've got enough of a flat bottom to put my little feet and tails as well. So we've got our little bodies. I'm also going to roll my little tails, just going to roll them into a little ball there. Same with that one. And then for the feet, I do start by rolling it into a ball. I always find it best to roll my shapes into a ball first because it gives a really nice smooth finish to the soap dough. Then with this one, I'm kind of going to rest it on this finger and push with my thumb and then shape with my other thumb and forefinger until I get kind of like a little bunny foot sort of look. That's really awkward, but you get the picture. So we're aiming for that sort of little bunny foot there. So again, we're going to roll that into a ball and then just kind of shaping it. until you get that shape. Now they are all going to look different. The only way you're ever going to get these looking the same is if you have got a mold to do it with, but I like how they all have their own little quirks. So I'm going to get these last two shaped into our little feet, and then I am actually going to wash my hands because I can see I've got a little bit of white soap dough on my hand and I don't want to get it into the pink. And I also find after doing a bit of rolling and you've got the soap on your hand, the next time you touch another color it does transfer onto it. So I'm going to finish this one and go and wash my hands. All right, so now that I've got the white off my hands, we're going to come to the pink here, and I don't need a lot. I only need a small amount, so I'll put the rest of it away so it doesn't dry out. In fact, I've probably still got way too much here, even now. This is where it's going to be quite difficult for me to show you on the camera because we are going to be working with teeny tiny little pieces. But trust me, it really does bring these little bunny feet to life. So what I'm going to do is just roll out my pink until I've got that sort of really skinny bit of tail. First up, I want a fair amount. We're working in small amounts, but we want a fairly big circle. So I'm going for about that sort of much. And then what I'm going to do is take that piece, and I'm going to stick it to the top end of my little foot here and just squish it down a little bit. Bring you closer in so you can see a bit more. I'm then going to break off 3 of the tiniest little bits. Now I'll be really surprised if any of this can be seen on the camera, but we'll give it a go. So I've got a really tiny little ball there. I'm going to start by putting that one. I find it best to work with the center dot first, and then I'm going to break off another tiny bit. I lost that tiny, there it is, and say I lost that bit, but no, found it. And again, I'm going to roll it up into a little ball, and I'm going to stick it on the other side of the one we've just put down, and then I'm going to get that third little one, and I'm going to put that to the other side. And let's see if we can grab that foot. And it might be hard to see because it's a quite pale pink, but trust me, with the human eye, not through the camera, you can see them quite clearly. But I'm going to do that with the next foot. So again, I'm going to start with a slightly larger piece, roll it into a ball, and that's going to be like the main pad that goes in our little bunny's foot, and that's going to go up in the top bit. I'm going to roll that back out so it's nice and thin, because that really helps with getting those tiny little pieces. And then again, I'm going to break off 3 really small little pieces, roll them into a ball, and then onto the tips. I think that piece is way too big. Yeah. It's one of those things that once you start doing that, you'll get to see exactly what sort of size you get, a kind of a inkling for how big you need to make things. And I also find to work with this small amount, it is really best to have quite fresh soap dough as well. So this I actually made specifically for this task. So I only made this one about 4 days ago, and it's just at that right sort of consistency. I find if my soap dough's been in my box for a little bit too long, it gets quite difficult to work with these really small pieces. All right, so we've got the very last little piece. Just trying to get it there, roll it around and onto that final foot. All right, so now we can start assembling. I'm going to take one of those long pieces that I had here, and I find it best to work with the feet first. So I put one foot on and just push it down. My soap dough is quite fresh, so it's still got that nice stick to it. If yours is just that little bit older, you may need a little bit of water just to help stick them. But now we've got our 2 feet, I'm going to grab a little tail and I'm going to squish that over the top, and that kind of holds everything in place. And there's a cute little bunny butt there. So then we've just got this very last one to do. And then I can go ahead and go and grab my soaping oils and we can make our bunny hops soap. So there it goes. Let's go and make the soap. All right, so let's get on with making our soap here. I'm just going to gently pour my lye water into my oils. We're going to give this a really light mix just until it comes to emulsion, and that's just where the oils and the lye water have just come together and doesn't leave any sort of traces when you know, wiggle your stick blender. All right, so that should be enough. I was finding at one point that my soaps were tracing faster than what I was used to. And I sat there watching some of the videos I'd been making, and I discovered that the longer you kind of make the soaps, it's not that you become completely complacent, because you really can't, not when you're dealing with lye, but you do kind of go through the steps a little bit quicker. And I noticed I was probably actually stick blending my mix too long and then putting it into the colors and things. So I've changed the way I've been doing my stick blending. So I give it a couple of pulses with the stick blender and then give it a really good mix with the stick blender in there and then pulse it again. And I found that has just made my soap making so much easier, especially in these warmer months. So we've just mixed that up to that emulsion stage, and I'm going to split it off for a little bit of a swirl colour, and then I'm going to have a drop colour into this one. So my drop colour is orange pop, so we're going to hopefully make it look like little carrots. We might pop just a little bit more, see, as I throw a whole heap more in there. And I'm also going to pour some more into this brown. I'm actually not going to add any fragrance into that brown, so we can fill that up a bit more than what I normally would. I have thrown soap everywhere and I don't have my cloth. I'm going to have to go and get that. Now I am actually working with a colour which is going to discolour in the soap. I've been making exclusive melts for a monthly melt edit on the website, and each month I have some scents which are exclusive to that month and run around a theme. And in January I had an Australiana theme, and one of the scents was Lamington, because Lamington, I think they're actually from New Zealand, but we claim anything New Zealand here in Australia, so we've claimed Lamingtons. It does have 8% vanillin in it, so it is going to go dark. So I've actually put some mocha mica into this one to mix through. We might mix that one last. The only thing is with that Lamington, you can only use it at 0.3. At 3% in the soap, which is just not enough for my liking. So I have topped it up with some coconut, which I have been trialing. Both of these are from some Scent Method, and the coconut surprisingly doesn't darken. It just gives a very light colour, but it doesn't darken. So I've actually topped up from my 3% of Lamington, topped it up with the coconut, and hopefully it won't go too brown, but we're still going to work with it just in case. Let me get these colours mixed in. Oh dear, I knew I shouldn't have come in early to thing this morning. I came in early so I could actually do the filming without having to run backwards and forwards, opening my door, and that's why I'm a little bit disjointed with what I am saying to you, because I'm probably still not quite awake enough. But anyhow, I have just remembered I was meant to also pour off some green, because we're going to do some piping. Well, actually I don't know if I want to do piping or just pour a layer of green across the top of my soap, but in any which case I actually need a fair amount of green from out of this bucket that I've already put the brown mica into. I'm gonna just get a little bit more out of here, and we'll mix that brown in, and then I'll come back to this green in a minute. Oh, this is not going well, is it? Because I just don't think my bunnies are gonna sit very well on top of brown soap. They're gonna look, in fact, all the decorations I've got for this soap are gonna be better if they are not on a brown soap. What a mess. Okay, so now that I have finished making a right royal mess of this into this jug, I ended up getting an even bigger jug because I really want to put a nice layer of green on the top. I'm going to put in some Hello Spring, which is actually from Nurture Soap, and then I'm going to mix these colours in. I don't really want that brown going into the green, so we're just going to have to clean it off after I've mixed this bit and get a move on, because now this is going to start thickening. We might leave mixing that green just so I don't bring it up to that sort of light trace, which is where it will then start thickening. I want to get this into the mold, and given that I have just messed around a little bit there, we don't want to mess around any more. So let's get the stick blender clean so I'm not putting too much brown into that beautiful green. That's looking good. I'll pop that over there. Scrape down the bucket to get in all of that uncolored soap into our brown. All right, so let's add the fragrance in, and I'm going to add most of it in there. We will put a little bit into that brown. I'm not going to put any into the orange, and definitely not the green, because at 8% vanillin, this is going to darken, even though I have topped it up with another one that I do know has not been darkening on me. I made some of my little Razor Sunshine with it. It's taken on a slightly creamy look, which I'm not upset about for a coconut soap, because I did the little faces in white. They've been on the cure rack for 2 weeks now, and that's the same color they've been for 2 weeks. So I don't think the coconut's going to darken. So hopefully having the two mixed together, this won't darken too much. Let's get that fragrance mixed in here. And then what I'm going to do is drop pour the brown into my bucket so we get a bit of a swirl going through there, and then I'm going to pour the orange in as drops to try and make it look like carrots in the ground. Oh, this is smelling really good. I just got a hit of the coconut in this one. For those of you who don't know what lamington is, it's a little cake dessert thing, very sort of Australian. As I said, it could actually be from New Zealand. And it's like in the middle is a white cake. I think it's meant to be vanilla, but it's always a white sponge cake, really light and airy. And then they cover that sponge in a chocolate sauce, and then they dip it into coconut, into desiccated coconut. They're really quite nice. Well, I enjoyed them, and I think that's because when I first came to Australia, I was about 8 years old, and it was one of those sort of things. My grandparents, who were living here at the time, just wanted to share everything that was kind of uniquely Australian, and having lamingtons was just one of those things. So they have a little bit of a nostalgic thing for me, which is why I probably still like them when I can find some that have been made dairy-free. Let's grab a mold. I'm going to pour all of the brown in here. Let's hope that mold stands up in a minute. There it goes. Now we can pour all of that, and that's going to look like the ground that the bunny is trying to get into. I don't need to save any of this back, so we're going to give it a really good scrape out, and then I will end up pouring that orange in, as I said, in those drops. All right, let's give that a little bit of a wiggle jiggle. We'll get our orange, and I'm gonna just pour it up and down. I'm not wanting it to drop too far in, because as I said, I want this to look like carrots on the surface. Not sure what's going on outside my shop. Usually I say to you guys, I'm not sure if the microphone's picking up on stuff, and when I do the editing, it's like, nah, you didn't hear any of what I can hear. So the microphone on these Pocket 3 cameras are pretty awesome, but we've got some workmen just outside the shop that pulled up as I started to make this soap. I think there's something wrong with the drainage just outside, and they're fixing up the bit of road as well. So hopefully you guys can't hear any of that. But anyway, I now have the orange in there, and I'm going to move on to working with this green. All right, let's give this a bit of a mix. All right, so I've just given my green a bit of a mix. I have brought it up to a light to medium trace because I do want this to set up. I was going to pipe originally, but it does take a lot of time to do that, the type of piping I want to do on this one. So what I'm actually going to do instead is pour this over the top. I'm going to let it set up a little bit more, and then I'm going to get my chopstick on there and just kind of dab the chopstick in it to make it stand up a little bit and make it look a little bit grass-like. Usually to do grass with the piping, I need to use a leaf tip, and it doesn't always look like grass. It looks like leaves piped on the top. And I will just want to try it this way instead. It will be that little bit quicker to do. So now we've got that poured. Going to pour it gently across the top. I don't mind if it moves the soap just a little bit, but I don't necessarily want it dipping down in there. You'll see when it comes to cutting, I did see the soap move just a little bit, but that's okay because the ground's not always even. Let's give this a bit of a scrape out. I'm not worried that it's not flat. I just want it to be evenly spaced down the mold so all our bars are the same height. All right, just giving that a bit of a wobble just to make sure that that is into all the corners. I'm going to let this sit for a couple of minutes just to firm up a little bit before I come back and texture the top. In the meantime, I'm going to clean up this big mess that I have made. All right, so I've let this set for a bit just to firm up, and I was going to use the chopstick just like this just to try and get a few little swirly bits, but I may have let this sit for just a little bit too long. It's set up a bit quicker than I was anticipating. So what I might do instead, just to make it a bit quicker, that's better. Oh, we've pulled up a bit of the orange there. I'm just going to use a stainless steel fork instead, just to really roughen the top. Don't worry, once we get our little bunnies on here, it will look a lot better. Sometimes when we're making things and it just doesn't look quite right, but once you actually put all those finishing touches on it, it really does change the whole look. But I actually am quite happy with how that is coming up. It looks a lot more like grass than piping little leaves on there. So I'm going to finish doing that, and then we're going to get our little bunnies and we're going to stick them onto the soap here. All right, this is just screaming biodegradable glitter at me, so I'm going to pop that on there now. I am then going to take my gloves off. I'm going to go and wash them off, and then we'll pop our bunnies on. All right, so I've got my little bunnies here, and I'm just going to pop them on, making sure they are between my lines and just pushing them in through the center there. They are so cute. It has been so long since I made this soap. It is actually quite funny because this soap, I had a problem with this soap many years ago in that I actually made a video of it. So I actually made a version of this soap 3 years ago, and one of the comments that got left on that video was basically accusing me of copying another person's design. Now, I actually don't get a lot of time to watch YouTube. Back then I did still watch it, but not very often. And these days I rarely get time to watch YouTube. I make a real conscious effort to sit and watch both George from King of Suds and Lee from Wickedly Goods, but otherwise I just don't have time to sit and watch YouTube videos. And when I'm in that sort of creating mood, I actually don't look at many things at all. So quite often if something does look like someone else's work, it is pure and utter coincidence. I have always made it a point never to directly copy or knowingly copy someone else's work. So I was quite upset when somebody said this to me. And I actually said, because when I released the video, the soap was already 3 weeks on the cure rack. So, and I had started to see more Easter videos coming up. And I said, if anyone else's soap looks similar to mine, it is purely coincidence. And then they said, oh, well, I made one of these soaps a couple of days ago. And it's like, well, I made this 3 weeks ago. So technically you've copied me. Like, even though she's not seeing what we're doing. And it always just makes me laugh how people do automatically assume that you've copied other people's ideas. These videos can sometimes be filmed weeks in advance before you actually see them. So if you are seeing other people's videos at the same time, it is quite possible people haven't copied. There's just only so many ideas out there. I know for myself, there were actually quite a number of makers at the time that we all just had very similar ideas, and it did look like we were copying each other, but we actually weren't. There was one week I remember that Lee from Wicked Lee Goods, she put a soap out on her channel and I put a soap out on my channel, and we were both making lemongrass and Persian lime, and we both made it in layers with exactly the same colors, and we had no idea each of us had done it. So yeah, just because someone's design looks similar doesn't always mean they've actually copied. But there we go. That's what this soap always reminds me of. I have these little soap dough flowers here that I am making up. To make these, I have used some sprinkle sheets that Wicked Lee used to sell. Unfortunately, she doesn't have them anymore. And all I've done is I've popped some soap dough into the sheet. This is the star one. I squish some soap dough into the sheet, and then once it hardens up, I push them out. So I've got all these little flowers, and all I'm going to do is pop these flowers on and around the bunny. I'm going to put 2 on each side and try and get different colors on all of them. So I'm going to keep doing that, and then once I've got them all in, I'll bring you in for a closer look. There's bunny hops in the mold. Don't worry, that green always goes that disgusting khaki color while it's saponifying, but usually comes back to a brilliant bright green. So that should be nice tomorrow. We're going to leave this one set up, and we'll be back in just a moment, and we'll take a look at the inside. All right, it is the next day and we're ready to cut into bunny hops, and look how gorgeous that green has come up. It really does go such a foul color as it's saponifying, and I do cross my fingers every single time, hoping that this one will come up a nice color. It usually does, but there's always that one time, isn't there? All right, we're gonna get this one all lined up. I think we have missed all of our little bunnies. So let's push Ida through. Oh, she's firmed up a bit there, and thonk. All right, I'm gonna get this end piece off and we'll take a look. I can tell you this one is smelling so good. Oh, look. That one does look like there's carrots hanging from the top. Those drops couldn't have been more perfect, because if you look at the back of it, it's not quite as carrot-like as that side. But I'm super impressed with how this fragrance is holding in here. Oh, look, another one that looks like carrots. So I use that lamington, and chocolate sort of fragrances are notorious for fading, but this one seems to be nice and strong. I love those swirls that have dropped down to the bottom. So hopefully this one is going to hold throughout its cure and still keep that nice chocolatey aroma. It'll also be interesting to see whether this one does discolor or how much it discolors as well. So I will be posting pictures of this one once it's cured. In fact, by the time this video comes out, the video or the soap should be cured by then, and there will be photos over on social media as well as on the website, because like I said at the beginning, I severely misjudged the times for this soap, so it's not going to come out in time for Easter. I love that. Look at those swirls. But I'm super happy with how this one has turned out. Absolutely loving it. And I know it's a bit of a repeat of my old sort of soap, but I think this one has come out better than the original one I did. So I hope you've enjoyed coming along with me as I made my bunny hops soap. If you did, why not leave me a thumbs up and any comments down below. And until the next video comes out, I hope you have a good one, and I will see you then. Bye.